Hi, my name is Trish. I'm a recovering alcoholic addict, and my primary purpose today is to stay sober and help another alcoholic addict to achieve sobriety. I'm going to share a little bit of my story with you today, how it was, what happened, and where I am now. It's not been an easy journey, that's for sure, so there may be a few tears throughout this video. So please bear with me. I'm a little bit nervous, but I do appreciate you stepping up here and taking the time to listen to my story. So I was brought up in a small town in Ireland, 6,000 population and 56 pubs. I had my first drink when I was 14 years old. I was pretty shy growing up. I had a lot of brothers and sisters, and I'm the youngest, so a little bit of a daddy's girl. And when my father bought me my first drink at the age of 14, as soon as I had that beer, I felt like I had my wings. I felt that this is my best friend. I'm not shy anymore. I feel when I've had a drink that I can talk to anybody, I can be social, I can talk to boys. I felt pretty. And little did I know that it was going to lead me to a life of pure torture and destruction. My father was alcoholic, and he was pretty violent and quite aggressive when he was drinking. Absolutely beautiful man when he wasn't drinking, but that wasn't very often. And I witnessed a lot of fighting and beatings and stuff that a little kid should never have seen. Or yeah, it was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. I was terrified, absolutely terrified of my father when he was drinking. And so my brothers and sisters had moved out. They were older than me, and I can remember one night I'd been out in the pub with my friends having a good time and came home. I'd only just turned 17, so um, came home and there was nobody there. And I went to my bedroom and then I heard my dad arrive. And I just got this feeling that something wasn't quite right. And he came into my bedroom and I got quite aggressive. So nothing really happened, but it absolutely scared the living daylights out of me. And I thought, I'm not going to hang around for this. I have to get out of here. So I didn't have a passport. I'd never been on a plane. And I looked up in the local newspaper, and there was a family in San Francisco looking for a nanny. And I applied for the job. And within a few weeks, I was on a plane and heading to San Francisco. And I haven't lived in Ireland since. But yeah, the drinking was still fun. Every time I drank to get drunk. And I had my first DUI or DIC, depending on what part of the world you live in, um, when I was 21 years old, living in San Francisco. And it was a Friday night. I'd been out with the girls and I came home and decided that I wanted to go back out and look for a boy, an Italian boy that I'd been dating. So I, in my pajamas, hopped into my boss's car and off I went. And I went through a stop sign, So I was pulled over, and it was the scariest experience of my life. I've never had to deal with the police before. So, yeah, downtown San Francisco jail on a Friday night was a pretty scary place. Um, and I lost my job and I was sent home. So I went back to Ireland for a couple of weeks, but knew that I didn't belong there anymore, and proceeded to do many geographicals around the world. So I went from there to Copenhagen to work for a family, and then I went to the UK, and everywhere uh, I went with me, and my alcoholism followed me. Um, and this is where the fun started to slide out of it slowly, where I was getting in trouble with the police, and um, or asked to leave bars or clubs, or not allowed in places because I was intoxicated. And I ended up working for an Arab airline. Was based out in Saudi Arabia for a few years, and then based in London from Heathrow Airport. Still drinking, but still managing. It looked like on the outside everything was okay. Um, and I met a Kiwi man a man from New Zealand at Heathrow Airport. He was working for a company called DHL, and we had a hard and fast romance, lots of drinking, lots of ecstasy, good times, and yes, we got married after 3 months, um, and because I had discount and stuff with the airlines, we traveled to New Zealand a few times to see his family, and I fell in love with New Zealand. An absolutely beautiful country. And we decided to move here. But just before we were leaving the UK, a there was a knock on the door one day, and I opened the door, and they asked for my husband. And he came down, and he was handed a brown envelope. And yeah, it was the first I knew what was going on. And it was he was been done for fraud for around £140,000, something that happened before he met me, and he or not any of his family ever mentioned that to me. So we decided that the best thing to do was to move to New Zealand, and we moved. So you couldn't get any further away, miles and miles and miles away from my family and friends. Um, and I tried to make the most of it. But my husband changed quite a bit when we came to New Zealand, and he got more into the DAC and the weed, and um, more controlling, and yeah, it was just a friggin' nightmare. But eventually, the people who he owed money to overseas caught up with him in New Zealand, and therefore everything that we purchased or anything that we owned had to be in my name. And that was a lot of pressure on me. We bought a house, the mortgage was in my name. Bought a car, that was in my name. His salary went into my account. And he was getting worse and worse and worse, smoking weed, and would be quite aggressive. And I thought that maybe having a baby might change that. So I fell pregnant. I was about 31 years old, and gave birth to the most beautiful boy when I was 32 years old. And I knew in my heart and soul that I couldn't cope with this man, but I didn't want to leave him. I wanted to stay with my husband. I wanted my son to have a mom and a dad, and tried my best. But it was just getting worse and worse. I felt like I was walking on eggshells all the time when When my son woke up early in the mornings, I had to take him out walking so we didn't wake his dad up or he'd get really, really angry. And one morning when my son was 18 months old, I was absolutely exhausted, and my baby boy had been asleep for like 9 hours. You couldn't ask for more. And he woke up about 5 o'clock in the morning, which is the norm. But I was exhausted, and I said to his dad, I said, "Please, can you go to the baby this morning, and please excuse my French because I don't like to use this word very often, but um, this man said to me, he threw the covers back over my head and he said, 'You're nothing but a fucking cunt. You get up to him.' And like that, my shoulders went down. And I thought, I do not deserve this. I didn't argue back. And I thought, I'm going to leave. I've had enough. So he went to work and I got my son up and we went to the supermarket and I bought 20 garbage bags. And everything that man owned, I put in the garbage bags. And I wasn't changing my mind. But the thing that happened was there was nobody around now to watch me when I was drinking or using. And my drinking got worse, especially when my son wasn't there at the weekend. And I was getting into more and more trouble, never knew when to stop, had another DUI, and the pain just went on and on. So I eventually drew a line in the sand and went to a fellowship, 12-step program, and committed to being a good mom and staying sober. And for the first 6 weeks, everything was going great. And I met a man, not in the fellowship, but yeah, I met a man, and we actually took it really slow because he had children as well. And we didn't move in with each other, or we didn't introduce the kids for the first year. We didn't move in with each other for 3 years. And we got married after 6 years. But there was a few problems there too, where he was actually quite controlling. He wasn't a drinker or a user, but he was quite controlling. And I wanted to take my son to Fiji on a trip. And he was like, "No, you're not going on your own. We're a family now. If you're going anywhere, we all go together." And I thought, this doesn't seem quite right. Anyway, I loved the man so much, I just did whatever he said. So I'm in recovery, trying to stay sober. He had 2 children that were with us full time. So um, a son and a daughter, and my own son. My husband then was in the fire service, and he had a business on the side, and his goal was to be mortgage free by the age of 50. So he was a workaholic, and he was never around. So here am I trying to stay sober in the corporate industry and trying to raise 3 children. And I woke up one day and I thought, I used to be the single mother of one. How the hell did I end up being the single mother of 3? And 2 of these children are not even my own. And they were not easy children to raise. So I'm saying to my husband, I'm not coping. And it triggered me because when I was growing up, nobody ever listened to me. And he didn't listen to me. And I kept saying to him, I'm either going to have to work part-time, or something's going to have to change. You're going to have to help me. But nothing changed. And 6 months before I picked up a drink, I picked it up in my head. I got a dose of the fuckets, what we call a dose of the fuckets. And it didn't take long for everything to turn to disaster. So I wasn't coping very well with my stepson and hadn't from the beginning. He was a nightmare. Used to beat my son up, tie him up, hit his sister. He hit me one day and said, sorry, I thought it was my little sister. Just an absolute nightmare. So something happened this particular day, and I called my very best friend at the time, and I was sitting on the stairs, and I said to her, I've actually had enough and I'm going to leave after Christmas. It was coming up to Christmas and we had a holiday booked. I said to her, I'm going to let the kids have their holiday and I'm going to leave after Christmas. And my stepson heard me and called his dad and his grandparents and all that. And yeah, so I left. I left. And the drinking took off and it got a whole lot worse. It's a progressive disease, you know? It got a whole lot worse. So I was driving drunk, crashing cars, trying to harm myself. And, you know, my son hadn't seen me drink for a very long time, and he's seeing a very different mum now. He's like, who the heck is this woman? So I scared him, you know, I scared my boy. And he left, and it broke my heart. He moved in with one of his friends' mums. And I begged and begged and begged people to try and get him to talk to me, and he wouldn't talk to me. I would go to his school and beg the dean, please get my boy to talk to me. And it actually made me worse. It made me a whole lot worse. I thought, I cannot stay in New Zealand with my son just living up the road. I can't stay here. So I decided to go back to Ireland. And I hadn't lived there since I was 17 years old. And I was 48. So I had a little bit of money because I bought and sold a couple of houses and made some money. Now, an alcoholic with money is a dangerous woman or man. So why I was saying I want to go home and be with my family and spend some quality time with them to see if I would ever really actually move back to Ireland for good. So I sold everything I had, booked an Airbnb in Ireland and paid cash for it for a year, 30 kilometers away from where my family were. You can see where this is going. So I could do what I wanted, when I wanted, and I didn't have to work. I never thought I would be a woman that would buy cases of wine and close the curtains and just drink. And that's what I became. I didn't want to live and I didn't want to die. I was stuck. All I craved was pure oblivion because I couldn't deal with any emotion. So I would drink myself to blackout. And as soon as I felt myself coming to or my eyes opening, I would put my hand out and grab a bottle because the crystal glasses were well gone and the Egyptian cotton sheets were well gone. I would put my hand out and pick up a bottle and swig on it until I passed out again. And I would do that for days and days and days. Sometimes I did not make it out of bed to go to the bathroom. It was a very lonely time. I would wake up and it was dark. I didn't know if it was early morning or nighttime. I was a tornado running through the lives of people that loved me and my family. I caused chaos wherever I was. So I was disowned by my family, and I don't hold that against them. I was extremely sick. But for an addict like me, tough love doesn't work. Everybody's different, you know? There's no cookie cutter. Sorry. There is no cookie cutter alky or addict. I needed to be loved back to wellness. So the money ran out and I had to move out of the house. But my priority was booze and Xanax. So I slept in my car. It was pretty cold, wintertime in near Galway City in Ireland. And I didn't care. You know, I'd lost all respect for myself. And eventually I ended up selling my car and I was homeless. I was homeless for just about 4 months. I got to a stage where I didn't care if I was murdered. I didn't care if I was raped. I had tried to commit suicide on several occasions and it never worked. So I just thought I'd drink myself to death. And there's a lot of family, friends, and material stuff that I lost through my addiction. But the biggest thing I ever lost was my soul. I was numb. I couldn't make eye contact with another human being. And I went to rehab in Ireland. And it was a place called Coomera. It was a government-run rehab, and it was run by nuns. Excuse me. And yeah, so I was in there for 4 months. And once you go in that door and behind the gates, you don't come back out. You hand over your phone when you go in there. You get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and you're out of your room and you don't go back to your room until 9 o'clock that night. So you're either working on your recovery or working on the grounds and cleaning. And every night we did the rosary, even though I was falling asleep, not allowed to leave until you did the rosary, and into your bed at 9 o'clock. And I was terrified when I went in there. And when it came for time to leave, I didn't want to leave. I was more afraid to leave. I felt safe when I was in there. Because an alcoholic like me can't deal with the world. I can't deal with emotions. I get hurt very easily. And the only way I knew how to deal with pain and hurt was to numb myself. No, I didn't put my hand up when I was 5 years old when the teacher said, "What do you want to be when you grow up, Trish?" I didn't put my hand up and say, "I want to destroy everyone around me and be an alcoholic." But it was the only way that I could cope. I ended up getting sober. But I could stop, but I couldn't stay stopped. After having 8 years sober and relapsing, I couldn't stay stopped. At 9 months sober, still living in Ireland, I was out of rehab and had a little house, a little cottage, and doing well and doing a lot of service and doing meetings and helping others. And I was happy. And when I was 9 months sober, I had a phone call from a person in New Zealand to say that my boy wasn't very well, that I needed to come back to New Zealand, to home. So within a couple of days, I was on a flight to New Zealand, and when I got here, yeah, I knew that he needed his mum, so I came back, came back, and things were going okay for a while. Got a job pretty quickly. I was, you know, back into my field of work and doing well, staying sober, and coming. Actually, I had celebrated 2 years sobriety in July, and in August I went to Fiji for a conference for work. And I wanted to stay on a few days after the conference because I just needed a little bit of a break. And I asked my son and his girlfriend to stay at my house because I had some animals. So when I stayed on after the conference, I even booked into a alcohol-free resort, and I was doing really well. And about 3 days into my holiday, I had a phone call from my son. And he said, "Mom, something terrible's happened." He said, somebody broke into the house and they've taken pretty much everything. And I just thought, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Don't worry about it. We'll sort it out when I get back. Just make sure you're safe and you're okay. And talk to the police and we can claim insurance." And he said, "No, Mom, I went to work this morning and left the front door open. I didn't know what to think." My son was doing a lot of drugs at the time and hanging around with dodgy people. Anyway, I said, "Don't worry about it. We'll sort it out when I get back." So I stayed on my holiday. I actually had a good time. I let it go. I forgot about it and enjoyed myself. And on the plane on the way home, it hit me like a freight train. And I thought, I've just built myself back up, got some bits of furniture, secondhand furniture, but I had my stuff again. I wasn't homeless anymore. I had a nice home, and now it's all gone. And as I was thinking that, the air hostess passed by me and held out a glass of champagne, and I took it. There was my next relapse. I'm going to skip a few months here because it was just a shit show. And so that was the end of September, August, September 2019. So we'll get to 2020. Everybody remembers 2020. So I'm still drinking and we go into lockdown. Not a good place for an alky. Work from home, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, just before lockdown, my boy came to see me and he was broken. He'd inherited my disease and my dad's disease. Pardon me. He was 6'4" and about 60 kgs. And I thought I knew what depression was because I've worked in the pharmaceutical industry for years. And I'd never seen anything like it. My boy was falling into his dinner. His dad wasn't a part of our lives. I didn't know how to cope with this. I didn't know what to do. So I took him to mental health. And we were in a room and one of the doctors said to Ryan, "Your mom tells us you don't want to be here anymore. Is that right?" And he said, "Yes." And they said, "Do you have a plan?" And he said, "Yes. I'm going to hang myself in my mom's garage." And I said to those people, "I can't cope. Please do not send my boy home with me. I don't know what to do. I can't." I, they sent him home with me. So my way of coping was the norm. I drank. And every morning I would call a friend to walk with me to his bedroom so I could look in the window while I was talking to her to make sure that nothing had happened to him. I couldn't do it on my own. So I got worse. I detoxed him at home and he got better. It's taken me a little bit longer to get well. The last time I had a drink was 3 years ago. On the 27th of January, I was 3 years sober. And it's the best recovery I have ever had in my life. Because the last time I ended up in hospital from harming myself and not being able to walk because the DTs were so bad, they told me they weren't keeping me, that they were sick of seeing me coming in this state, and that I would be there for about 3 days and they'd turn around and I would have disappeared. So they said they were going to send me home. And by the grace of God, they didn't. I got a bed. And I am so grateful that I got that chance. So the last 3 years, I have made my recovery the most important part of my life. It comes before any man, woman, or child, even my own. I'm of service to other people in recovery. I'm in a 12-step program. I put the principles and steps into my life on a daily basis. My program is my life. I've got a beautiful spiritual connection. And if I put any drink or chemical into my system, I lose that connection. And my connection is priceless to me. I love nature. I love swimming. I love helping people. I go to the gym. I eat well. I put my heart and soul into my recovery today because I don't want to be just sober. I want to be happy, joyous, and free. I don't want to be a miserable old fuck sitting in the corner with a bow in my hair saying, I can't drink, I'm so bored. I want to be happy, joyous, and free. If you want to be happy, joyous, and free, and you're struggling, follow my story. Thank you for listening. God bless you.